This is the story of the woman who bottled the sun. It all began when Mária Telkes graduated from university in her native Hungary with a degree in chemical engineering. Then the Second World War broke out. Telkes, who was Jewish, fled with her husband from the advancing Nazi troops. They made it to Marseille in France, but soon found themselves stuck there because the United States had closed its borders to immigrants. For a while, the couple lived in Marseille, but after the Germans occupied the city in 1942, they went into hiding. Eventually, they managed to bribe some nuns to hide them in a monastery in southern France. They stayed there until the end of the war. After the war broke out, the United States did open its doors to immigrants again, and Telkes and her husband immigrated to the United States. She quickly got to work at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology (MIT) as an assistant professor of biology. There, Telkes helped research ways to purify water using solar energy. This research caught the attention of the U.S. military, which led to her being recruited to design a device that could help service members survive in the ocean if their ship sank. At the time, the military had life rafts that could keep people alive for several days by providing shade and protecting them from the elements. But no matter how many life rafts the U.S. military produced, none of them could solve the problem of thirst. Because the ocean is salty, drinking it will dehydrate you rather than quench your thirst. The military needed a way to remove salt from ocean water and turn it into fresh drinking water. So Telkes set to work designing a way to use the energy of the sun to extract fresh water from ocean water. Her idea was simple yet ingenious. She basically took the process of how water naturally evaporates and condenses in nature and put it inside a man-made machine. She called it a solar still. Telkes' invention was made from 2 pieces of plastic sandwiching a layer of absorbent material. One piece of plastic was clear, so sunlight could go through it, while the other was black. Once deployed, sailors would pour seawater onto the black plastic, which would absorb the sun's rays. This would cause the water to evaporate, and the resulting water vapor would condense on the underside of the clear plastic, which was angled slightly upwards. This would cause the vapor to run down into a collecting container. Essentially, Telkes had invented a way to turn the sun's rays into fresh water. But this invention would only be useful if it could produce enough fresh water to prevent dehydration. Telkes wanted to make sure her invention would be useful in the real world. So she tested her device extensively, sometimes leaving it out in the hot sun for weeks at a time. These tests showed that the device could produce up to 2 liters of fresh water per day, enough for someone to survive for several days. The military loved it and soon started including these stills in life rafts. By the end of the war, over 40,000 of these solar stills had been distributed around the world, and Telkes had become a bit of a celebrity. Journalists and photographers followed her round it, trying to capture her for a story. But despite all the attention, Telkes remained focused on her work. She saw the potential of her solar still for helping people around the world and wanted to improve it even more. She developed a device that could produce even more fresh water by using a vacuum pump to speed up the evaporation process. But although this device worked well, it had one major flaw. It required electricity to operate. which meant it wasn't useful in situations where there was no power source. Undeterred, Telkes continued to work on developing new ways to harness solar energy. After the war ended, she noticed that most of the houses in the area didn't have central air conditioning. Since electricity was scarce, most people relied on kerosene heaters to stay warm during the winter. These heaters were expensive to run and released dangerous fumes. So Telkes came up with an idea to use the sun to provide cheap, clean energy. She created a system that used a chemical reaction between sodium sulfate dehydrate and water to store heat from the sun. During the day, the sun would heat the compound, causing it to release water. The water would then flow through pipes to radiators throughout the house, heating it up. At night, the compound would absorb the heat from the house and reabsorb the water, releasing it back into the radiators. In effect, she had created a passive heating system powered by the sun. In 1946, Telkes tested this system in her own house, and it worked so well that she was able to maintain a comfortable temperature throughout the winter without using any fuel. The following year, Telkes refined her invention and installed it in a house in Dover, Massachusetts. This house, now known as the Solar House, was the first building in the world to use passive solar heating as its primary source of energy. Unfortunately, the system was too expensive for the average person, so it never caught on. Nevertheless, Telkes continued to work on developing affordable ways to harness solar energy. In 1954, she invented a type of solar cell that converted sunlight directly into electricity. Her cells were more efficient than those previously developed, and they paved the way for future generations of solar cells. Throughout her career, Telkes received numerous awards and honors for her work. But perhaps the greatest reward was seeing her inventions used to help people around the world. In the 1970s, solar energy became popular as an alternative to fossil fuels, and Telkes' work was instrumental in this movement. Her solar stills are still used today to provide fresh water in remote areas without access to electricity, and her passive solar heating systems are used in buildings around the world. Although Telkes passed away in 1995, her legacy lives on through the work of the Mária Telkes Solar Energy Foundation. The foundation provides grants to researchers working on ways to harness solar energy more efficiently. Today, we rely on a variety of sources for our energy needs. But it was pioneers like Telkes who showed us that the sun could be a viable alternative to fossil fuels. Telkes understood that the sun was a source of almost limitless energy, and she dedicated her life to finding ways to harness it. Her inventions may seem simple today, but they were revolutionary at the time, and they paved the way for future generations of solar technology. She was truly the Sun Queen. Telkes was a brilliant engineer and scientist, but she was also a humble person who was passionate about helping others. She saw the potential of solar energy to improve the lives of people around the world, and she dedicated her life to making it a reality. In a world that often seems dark and divided, it's important to remember the legacy of those who brought light into our lives. Mária Telkes was one of those people, and we should strive to follow in her footsteps. So what can you do to make the world a better place? How will you bring light into the darkness? If you liked this video, check out the rest of videos. This episode was researched and written by Gaurav Garg. As always, a huge thank you to our supporters. Your support makes it possible for us to tell stories like this one. We couldn't keep doing what we do without you. So thank you. And if you're not yet a supporter, you can support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing. All those things help us reach more people and continue telling our stories. Thanks for watching. See you next time.